I work for CSC now. I'm the regional CTO. But before that, I used to work for on the delivery side. So I used to work for Visa. I used to work for DHL. And I remember something very clearly about the guys that I would send out to training, and in particular, security training. So when I came back, or when these guys would come back from this training class, their eyes were really wide. They would walk around the building absolutely terrified of everything and wouldn't even get near a keyboard because they would go to these trainings that would just induce paranoia in them. They were scared to death. And then a few years passed and we started sending people to cloud training. And I have to tell you, I think the situation was almost exactly the opposite. These people would come back and say, we need to move everything to cloud right now, right? And I think, as we sort of investigate enterprise IT, as we start to understand how it is that our organizations can actually view what we do and how it is that we can move to IT in the cloud, right, particularly in Amazon, I think you have to have sort of a bit of rationality about this. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to show you how it is from a services point of view that we can understand how it is that these migrations actually function. So let's start with a quick discussion about hybrid architectures and what that means for users. So users basically are very keen on consuming any kind of service that we provide, no matter how it is that we provide it. So there are public cloud services, there are public cloud infrastructure, and there's our private cloud services as well. And all of these form this triangle around the users, and they consume these services, and they want to consume them transparently. They really don't care where it is that these particular services reside. So whether Workday resides in the cloud and whether this piece resides here and this custom app is running here, they don't care, they just want it to work, right? So the problem is that from an architectural standpoint, these sorts of architectures are significantly more complicated than what we used to see. So when it was all in the data center, everything was fairly straightforward. You could put your arms around it. You could run a security envelope around it. You could manage those services through the traditional set of tools. Now, suddenly, you have these hybrid architectures, and there's some real risk around that. So I want to try to actually talk about what these business risks are before we can talk about how it is that we might be able to solve them. So let me show you a little bit of graph. So this is a very interesting graph that a woman drew for me a long time ago who was running the service desk at DHL. And what she showed me is she showed me that every sort of help desk looks about like this in terms of this graph. So you have the number of incidents and requests that are resolved, and then you have the percent of target resolution time at the bottom. So what that means is that it means that if a ticket is solved, has a target resolution time of 4 hours, and it's solved in 2, it'd be right down the middle, right? And if it's solved in 4 hours, it would be at the end, right at the SLA. Now, if the target resolution time is 2 days and you solve it in 1 day, it would also be in the middle. So this is a way of aggregating all your tickets together and saying, how effective am I in terms of the percent of SLA time in resolving tickets and service requests, okay? So this is what almost every service desk is going to look like. There's a bunch of first call resolution, then over time you get done, and you have a few that run out of SLA. Now, here's the problem. The problem is that hybrid IT services contain this risk. Even if the number of tickets that are resolved or requests that are resolved out of SLAs actually remains exactly the same, what happens is this curve can move to the right. And that is real risk for your companies because we're talking about people who cannot get their work done, either because the service requests that they're trying to fulfill cannot be fulfilled, or because there are incidents that are unresolved. Now, as we talk about this with customers now, we consider this sort of the new model that we have around how it is that we need to do service delivery in these new architectural realms. Let me let you in on probably what's not even a secret anymore, and that's nobody cares about SLAs, right? I'm going to say that again because I think it sort of wakes people up sometimes. Nobody cares about SLAs. So every quarterly business review, you're going to argue about it. The SLA is green, the SLA is red. But I'll tell you what, if your downtime, or if your uptime SLA is 99.5%, and that 0.5% is in the finance department when they're doing month end, and you show that service is green, nobody thinks that that's the case. So the ability for us as IT professionals to understand how it is that we can deploy business services that actually manage productivity within the employee realm How it is that we can take these complex IT architectures that our users are insisting on, that we know that have cost benefits, and how we can actually turn that into something positive for our users' experience. That's the key business driver that we need to focus on in terms of how we deploy hybrid IT. And that's the opportunity. The opportunity is for us to take these architectures, these hybrid IT concepts, and actually move that curve to the left to make our employees more productive. Again, you can have the same number of tickets that are resolved out of SLA, but what you are doing is you are increasing the productivity of your users while actually capturing the cost benefits that are associated with hybrid IT. So the only way that I know of to do that is through automation and self-service. So our ability to manage and our ability to secure these environments in such a way that they can heal themselves and that they can provide services to users in an authoritative, authenticated way, that's how it is that we can solve this issue. So this is the key to understanding what the goal is going to be. So how to manage these complex hybrid IT services. So one of the things that I see a lot in terms of how customers approach this is they approach this as sort of having two domains. They have the cloud domain and then they have their internal domain. And they view both the security and the service management tools as being sort of separate. So they're going to secure their internal tools in a particular way, and they're going to have their services that are in the cloud, they're going to manage those and secure those in a different way. And I will tell you that this does not work. So one of the hardest things about some of the use cases that people will tell you about cloud is doing things like cloud bursting in a scenario that looks like this. All right, so imagine that you're trying to do cloud bursting. So now you know, okay, so if here's my peak demand in terms of compute, and I know that I can go above that in terms of increasing with Amazon, right? So that extra percentage that's there. So how is it that I can actually deploy services into that realm? Well, it's not real hard to spin up Amazon instances. What's hard is managing those in configuration management terms and managing those in security terms. So if you have to deploy a whole new set of tools to understand how it is that that works, basically what you are doing is you are erasing the cost benefits that you're getting from cloud bursting. So you have to be very careful about how it is that you develop these hybrid cloud strategies. In a lot of ways, they need to be almost a commitment that you make up front. We're not just going to do a few servers, we're going to do a few hundred. We're going to do at least a few dozen. And that way the investment that you can make in extending what is currently your security posture and your service management posture, it actually becomes an investment that's worthwhile. And that's this. So how to manage those hybrid services, right? You're going to extend your service management and your security envelopes out into the cloud. This is what we recommend as the approach that will actually get you what you want. It'll get you a managed service that you can understand as crossing both the data center boundary and existing in the cloud. Again, the security processes that you use, you can't have two different ones so that you have to involve complex correlation in order to understand what a security event actually looks like. Instead, just extend that security envelope. So the question now is, how do you do that? So we at CSC, we have two approaches that we try to take, two tool sets. I won't call them tools, but two services that we believe actually help to manage exactly what I'm talking about here. So first is the ServiceNow piece. So basically, we have an integrated ServiceNow instance that we offer to our customers who are running managed cloud services. That integrated service allows us to do what is sort of a SIAM light. So SIAM is a term that's bandied about quite a bit now, the systems integration, or service integration and asset management, the ability to take different vendors and their service management capabilities and bring them together and actually evaluate vendors against one another. I think a lot of vendors talk a good game on that, but I think it's a very difficult process to engage in. However, within the cloud space, what we have the ability to do is to, again, extend that service management envelope in such a way that you're managing through the same configuration management processes, the same sort of understood notions of how it is that you put together business services, and you can extend that into the cloud, right? So now you have to have an interface that takes the telemetry that you receive from the information in the cloud, so the server state, the quality of whether that the service that server is providing, and it actually puts it into a SIAM integration hub and runs through ServiceNow. So again, this is the key, is that you have to have a single view of all of the things that manage the service within that organization. So in addition, there's the security piece. And I will loosely I'm going to transition a little bit from security to what I would call governance, right? So instead of actually managing, whatever security tool that you want to put there, it's just got to be consistent in such a way that you can guarantee the suitability of those particular servers for the task at hand. Whether that task be regulated, whether that task involve PII data or additional risk to your company, you have to develop that posture and that model and then implement it within the organization. So when it was all our internal data centers, we had a fairly easy way of doing that. We had these models. These models would all sort of run edge to core. We understand how it is that traffic would flow through these particular areas. Now, the governance that's associated with this is by nature going to become more complicated. Again, the opportunity is there for us to capture the savings that are associated with these hybrid architectures. The question is, at what risk are we going to do it? So we at CSC have the agility platform. And the agility platform does a lot of things, right? So I don't want to just focus on one aspect of it. Certainly it's an orchestration tool that allows you to produce consistent SOEs that are across both your internal tools and Amazon. But I think probably the key factor for it, in my mind, the key piece that really helps it move forward is that it has a governance engine that allows you to build rules around where it is that you're going to deploy certain pieces of your service. So if there are security requirements, and there always will be, or if there are regulatory requirements, and most of us have to face that as well, those requirements can be met via the policies that we implement in this tool. So now, instead of having a separate tool that understands your security processes that are going to run in the cloud from the ones that you have in your data center, you can have a single tool that actually manages the security envelope across both. A consistent view of what it is that you're actually providing in terms of a service to your customers. So we'll talk a little bit more about what else agility can do in a little bit. But first, let's talk about what a real customer is trying to do. So there's an Asian logistics company that we've been working with very closely in order to try to provide what we would consider a SaaS-like experience for their users. So when I say SaaS-like experience, what do I mean? I mean that the users experience the homegrown apps that they are running in the same way that they would experience something like a Google Docs, all right? So no longer is there a concern about where it's running or who's running it or how it's running. Instead, it's managed as a service from this organization provided to their customers. So as little thought as they can possibly have to these customers in terms of what it is that's delivered. A business service that's consistently available. So in order to do that, we had to develop sort of a joint service management piece between CSC and AWS. So we still host and manage a lot of the applications, so our ability to extend the envelope out into the cloud gives us the ability to manage both what is happening internally within that customer as well as what's happening in the cloud with AWS. So again, we get that single pane of glass, that single view of what's happening. So in addition to that, in order for us to actually be able to guarantee the consistency of that business service, we built robust test and development services around the SaaS-like experience. Again, so our ability to have the test and dev services in such a way that we can guarantee the consistency of the service design across both AWS and their internal systems allows us to make sure that we are governed correctly and that the service management is actually working correctly in such a way that the company can capture the savings without risking the productivity of its employment. Finally, we had a continuous delivery methodology so that the users get their service improvements that they require, they get them quickly, right? So again, this just starts pushing us more toward how it is that we can get into DevOps, how it is that we can actually do continuous delivery, have software development life cycles that are shorter and shorter. So this is how we felt we could bring a SaaS-like experience to these particular customers. So the SaaS-like experience includes applications like SAP. So our ability to deliver these and our ability to manage these is key to them actually running their logistics business. So what does that architecture look like? So this is a bit of an eye chart, so I apologize. But let me say that I think the key take-home point from this is that the corporate data center and the cloud piece are not that big, right? This is not really the challenge. The challenge around actually putting instances of apps, whether they be services that Amazon's providing or apps that you're providing within your data center, spinning those up, making them work, the orchestration even that's associated with that. As we get deeper and deeper into the cloud journey and enterprises are more and more invested in that, that becomes more and more of a commodity. The thing that's not a commodity, especially from an IT delivery point of view, the thing that actually can differentiate you is your ability to provide the services that are in blue. So your ability to actually say, I can consistently provide these particular services to customers in such a way that they will continue to experience the service and they will get the savings that we have offered to them as part of this cloud journey. That's the blue part. So things like the service operations, the service lifecycle, all of that is what stands in the way of us actually executing. So having that consistent view, so it's just one blue set of boxes, not many, having that consistent view of those differentiators, that's what allows us to move forward. And again, then we have the IT ecosystem integration, so things like security, the service management tools that we will actually use to do the deployment, consistent between both the cloud that we're running on-premise and the cloud that we run in AWS. That's the key piece of this solution in terms of how it is that we can capture those savings, how it is you can de-risk hybrid architectures. So the other piece of this is that as we continue to drive further and further into this journey, our consumers, the people who are actually using the IT services we provide, demand more and more from us in terms of our agility. So how is it that our agility, the CSC agility platform, actually helps to support that? Well, I think it's interesting because our ability to create blueprints around services and actually orchestrate them, again, is a key part of this. But as we begin to diversify the location of particular services, particular pieces of those services even, so perhaps the database resides in AWS, the middleware resides within our cloud, all of these possibilities exist in terms of how it is that we want to compose these pieces. It becomes more and more key for us to understand how these blueprints can roll through the various types of environments that we have. So again, one of the use cases that I see a lot of, and in fact, we were talking a little bit about it today at the earlier keynote, is test and dev first, right? So test and dev first is, I think, a very good way to sort of dip your foot into cloud for the very reason that you don't necessarily have the same requirements around service management and security that you would normally have. If you have an application, though, where you really have those sorts of requirements, if you have an organization that is a service provider, and essentially you're being asked to have test and dev servers with an SLA, right, then suddenly it becomes sort of a less intriguing prospect, right? Because you still have to extend your service management envelope, your security envelope further out into the cloud. So the other problem is that as you develop the software lifecycle around the deployment, the continuous deployment, what you lose is the ability to actually understand what the consequences of particular decisions are within dev and test when you run them in production. So if dev and test are in the cloud and the production servers are in your on AWS and your production server is on your personal cloud, your private cloud, then the question becomes, what's the transferability of those particular performance pieces that I know I need to align in order to make sure my consumers are happy, right? So, my approach is generally to talk about business services as being the migrate piece, right? Rather than individual workloads, rather than individual styles of those workloads like dev and test, to actually think about business services that you can deploy in a SaaS-like manner. And when we talk about how it is that our company actually comes about and provides these things, this is where we focus. We focus on providing a business service with a specified sort of productivity piece that we can offer to our consumers, right? So when we talk about DevOps now, we're talking about extending that further, making that work better. So our ability to actually have that business service 100% in the cloud now gives us the ability to move very quickly from dev to test to production. And we start to see the real kind of continuous integration success stories that we can have. And again, that's automation. It's self-service. It's being able to move that curve to the left in such a way that you can actually increase the productivity of the people who work for you. So have we done this? Yes, we have done this. So there's a global insurance company. Again, their goal was to increase the quality and speed of software delivery. So they used agile methods, and we actually sort of helped them develop some of these agile methods around the tool itself, around agility. So we basically used the model to produce DevOps principles and allow them to implement them. So these DevOps environments, they had to be consistent. So as a result, it's not just a question of dev and test in the cloud. It's now dev, test, and prod in the cloud. As a business service, it's been migrated. And how is it that we assure the consistency of the environments? Again, that's the orchestration piece. So our ability to blueprint and have consistent SOEs, consistent service relationships, and be able to deploy that into the cloud in a straightforward way, that's actually what makes sure that we can deploy that business service, that makes sure that we can actually sort of consistently provide a service for our customers. So again, we are extending that service management envelope. We're extending that security envelope in such a way that everybody understands that there's a single pane of glass, a single view into our organization that provides that SaaS-like experience to our users and ensures that they don't lose productivity because of these complex architectures that are being produced now in these hybrid technology environments. So that's the key to what we see in terms of our customer success. How is it that we, as CSC, can de-risk what it is that we know that they're going to do? We believe in the savings of cloud. We believe that AWS and the SaaS providers that are out there are actually going to reduce the cost of IT to our users. And what we have seen too much of is a situation where that savings is not achieved because of disparate tool sets, because of a lack of a single view. So our ability to provide that, our ability to extend into the cloud with the tools that we manage, that's actually what makes sure that you can actually capture that savings. So we de-risk cloud for complex architectures. We do that jointly with AWS. So AWS is clearly the undisputed public cloud market leader. We also have what we believe is a market-leading hybrid architecture management platform. That's the Agility platform. We also have the strong experience in terms of migrating the enterprises. We also have the service management capabilities that allow us to better understand how it is that we can respond to trends that are within the market. So one of the key insights that I think we gathered at CSC, so we did sort of an exercise around some white papers that we wrote. And these white papers were about what our future technology trends are going to look like. And there was a lot of discussion internally about what these white papers actually represented, right? Some people thought they represented an offering from CSC, but they don't. What they represent, and each of you, by the way, have a copy of 2 of these in your packet, what they represent is what is going to be. And it doesn't matter whether me or you or anybody else wants this to happen, it's going to happen. So moving into more and more of a hybrid IT in the enterprise, moving into next generation service management. These are things that are occurring all around us, whether we like it or not. We have to react. So how it is that we react in order to get these savings, and how it is that we de-risk those particular changes in such a way that we can actually deliver against the changes that we know are happening in the market, this is the key to our partnership with AWS. So we believe that they add the leading technology, and we believe we add the wrappers that ensure that you can get the savings, get the technology benefits, understand better how it is that you can deliver, but you can do it in such a way that you don't have the risk of a lack of your employees' productivity.